everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're doing a little bit of cosmetic stuff on the dually. I'm going to show you how to put 4th gen rear wheel well liners in to kind of augment the dually ones, because the dually ones only cover about 2/3 of the wheel well, and I wanted to cover the rest of it. So we're going to do that. We're going to put a set of Power Wagon fender flares on it. And we're going to get our running boards and mud flaps and splash guards and everything all sorted out. Let's get going. Here I've got this side all done, the right side. This took a lot of time because I was goofing around and fiddling around to get everything right. But we've got our flare on. We've got our full wheel well liner installed. We've got the mud guard part of the running board on. And we've got a new dually double wide mud flap on the back. We're all good. Now we'll go over to the other side and I'll show you how I did all of this. So here's some stuff that we've got. This is our original dually inner splash shield. And you could tell it leaves this whole side of the wheel well bare and this up around the top here. So here is our pair of 4th gen ones. 3rd gen ones are really hard to find, and I was just going to cut them up anyway, so I wasn't going to pay for those. The junkyards are full of 4th gens, and they seem to all have them. So I grabbed a pair of 4th gen rears. I actually grabbed 2 pairs because I figured I would, for each side, use one for cutting and hacking and figuring out, and then use that as a template once I was done, and do one final nice cut on the actual ones I was going to use. And on that same topic, or in that same vein, this is a pair of really crappy used Power Wagon style 3rd gen fender flares that I picked up on Marketplace just to see if the fender flares, the rear ones, would fit the dually fenders, because I wasn't quite sure. They don't fit exactly perfectly, but they're 90%, so that's good enough for us. Mostly I was interested in that because somewhere along the line they'd caught something with this thing, and this flare is a little bit busted up from about here down on this edge. There's a couple of hunks out of it and kind of a crack that goes along here, so these cover it up nicely. I didn't have to do any of my crappy body work. This urethane stuff, you got to know what you're doing to fix it properly. So I said, we'll just leave well enough alone and cover it up. And you know what? Quite frankly, I think it looks pretty darn good. So the first thing we're going to do is get this thing put back in there. Then we're going to fit the fender flare. Also, when you go to the junkyard, get as many of the 4th gen fasteners that hold the inner fenders to the wheel well, because these things go through, they're long enough to go through a fender flare, the box side, and catch the nut on the inner fender. The 3rd gen ones are short, and you'll run into problems trying to use those. Before we get too far into this, I do want to mention that an important step of this job is making sure our truck, the back end of it at least, because we're working on the back, is perfectly level from side to side, because we're going to be checking our mud flaps and stuff for plumb and making sure everything is exactly how it should be. So we've gone ahead, we've got it on stands, and we've got them adjusted so that the truck is perfectly level side to side. Step 1, we're going to drill out these 2 holes here to 3/16. That's where the original screws that hold in our liners go. And we're going to install a couple of these U-nuts that we've salvaged from one of our 4th gen inner liners, because we're going to be putting screws in and out while we do this job. And we want to make sure when we're done we can tighten everything up and it stays tight, and we're not going to be pulling the threads out of sheet metal. So now you can see with the stock, we'll just call it the dually inner fender in here, there's this whole area in the top that's left wide open, and there's pinch welds there. There's another one there. There's lots of places where crap can get and cause problems. And we just don't want all that stuff getting fired up in there. So we're going to cut down the 4th gen fender liner, and it'll fill this whole area. Next thing we're going to do is fit the flare. It fits the box okay, but none of the holes line up. The holes are for a steel box side on a, on a single wheel truck. So we have two choices. We could zing screws through the existing holes in the flare and just let them bore into the urethane. They'll go through the urethane and through the inner fender. They'll grip pretty good. Or we can mark out where our factory fasteners are, these ones, and use those. That's what I did on the other side. That's what I'm going to do on this side. You just kind of do it one by one. You work your way around. You got to make sure you keep that little nub in there in the accent line on the body, and just work your way around. And before you know it, you're done. The ones across the top, you have to put. I found that a 3/8 nut fits nicely between the flare and the box side, because there is a little gap between the flare and the fender. I'll show you that once I've got it done. It's much easier to explain then. There's the first one in. You can see it's off from the original bolt hole by a little bit, but it doesn't matter. It's in there good. Once we've got these two bottom ones on, that'll pretty much hold it in place. Then we can get up in here and mark. You can see, flash, there we go. You can see there is our original bolt there. So we're just going to mark that. And we'll do the same for the other one. Then we can take the flare back off, drill these two holes, put our shims in there, and we'll be all set. You can see there how it looks at the spacer. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but to make it fit the dually, that's what we have to do. The last hole we've got is this guy here, the center top one, and there's not much you can do except we got to go in there with a small drill bit and drill a tiny little hole in our fender liner. And then we're just going to very carefully wind this self-drilling or self-tapping screw in there to just tight. Now we've got this thing all in. All the fasteners are in, except there's 1, 2, 3 up here. Sorry, 1, 2, 3 up there. We're not putting them in yet. We'll get to that after. There's push fasteners that go here and here. And here's a couple of bolt holes from old mud flaps. This one will be exposed. It was too big for one of these, so I just put a Christmas tree in it. I had to do the same thing on the other side. Now we can cut down the inner fender and fit it. I got 2 pairs of them because there is some trial and error involved in getting these things in, but it didn't go too badly on the other side. So on this side, I've got the bits that I cut off the one on the other side. That should get me a much better start on this one. We'll use those as kind of a template. We'll cut it a little big so we've got room to spare, and then we'll see how it fits. First thing we're going to do is get an angle grinder with a flap disc on it and take these off and these off. Just those two, either side of center. That's all we have to take off. The rest of them are getting cut off. So here's our 4th gen liner, and this works out pretty well. The 3rd gen box and the 4th gen box, these screw holes are on 24-inch centers, both of them. Make sure we have the one that says left hand. They are slightly different front to back. The back end of it is up a little higher, and the notch for your U-bolt plate and everything is a little forward. And we end up with something like that. It's kind of, I hope I've cut it big so we can fiddle around with it and trim it down bit by bit so it fits perfectly. Otherwise, we can do what we did on the other side, is go too far, patch the pieces back up with Gorilla Tape, which actually makes it easier to work with. And then once I had it, so I was happy with it, I cut the second one perfectly using that one as a template, and it fit like a glove. But anyway, we'll go try this one and see how it fits. Well, that's pretty good. I screwed up and cut the top of it too small, so we're going to have to cut the other inner fender. That's fine. That's why we've got 2 sets of them. But we've got a pretty good template here to work with. All I got to do is when I cut the other one, I got to leave a little bit more there. I'd like it to fit in there just a little bit better. But aside from that, she's looking pretty good. Well, we're gaining on it. You just use a piece of chalk and you keep slowly picking away, trimming. Don't go too far. And now we're trying to get it. We've got it fit pretty well around here. Maybe a little final trimming to go, but now I want to start working up. We've got to get it worked up into there. So I've got to take a little bit more out of the back of it and widen this out a little bit. Like I said, if you're going to do this, get 2 pairs of them because you're going to wreck one for sure. All right, we've got it. It's fitting pretty nicely now. You can see there how it goes up in there like that. That's good. That's how we want it to fit. Perfect. And then when you've got it right, you can see that original hole up there for the little fastener just happens to line up with this notch. That's perfect. And I'll show you what we're going to do with that. We have to take it out one more time, and then it's going in for keeps. The other 2 holes that we need to go up into the box through our original liner are 9 inches this way and that way. You can see here, this one actually lines up with that hole. We just have to make it a little bit bigger, and we have to make a hole here. I usually put like a 3/8 hole in them just to give me lots of space. Now what we're going to do is this thing is going to go up there with 1, 2, 3, but we're not going to use the plastic push fasteners like the factory did because it won't have enough strength to hold this thing, because this is going to be kind of deflected up into there, or it's going to have tension on it anyway. So what we're going to use is these pointy kind of self-tapping 5/16 bolts. They bite right into the holes that are already there. You just be careful not to strip them out, and you'll be fine. So we're going to use 3 of these and get that zoomed up there. And you'll see as it pulls in, it kind of bends itself and sort of self-seals against the fender liner that's already there. So there you can see how that all fits up there. We have a blank hole there, but that doesn't cause any issue at all. Now we can start working our way down. What I normally do just to pull these things together, I just run a couple of little trim screws, little black trim screws through there to hold these 2 together tight. And then we'll work on the bottom here. Then what I do down here with these little skirts at the bottom, I just drill, I push it in so it's tight. I drill a 1/4 inch hole through both pieces, and I use one of these removable push fasteners for the simple reason that if down the road I'm working away in here, I haven't got sharp sheet metal screws poking through. These ones up here, they're not in the way of anything. They won't bother anybody. But down here, we don't want sheet metal screws. And there you go. That's how we do it. We have successfully installed a junkyard 4th gen wheel well liner in our 3rd gen dually pickup. I like it. It looks a lot better when you look in over the wheel, and hopefully it'll help protect the metal parts of our box. Now we've got this straightened up back here, what we're going to do now is I'm going to get these running boards and that front mud guard off, and we're going to start getting this stuff straightened out. I'll show you how we can't really fix this, but we can deal with it. Now that we've got the boards off, we're going to go along them and grab these are the little T-bolts that originally held the aluminum down to these metal brackets. So we're going to grab these with a vice grip and spin the nuts off of them. We'll get those all out of the way. Now all I got to do is I got to get my wire brushes here, and I'm going to start at the back and work my way forward and get these things all cleaned up a little bit, so we can smear some rust paint on them and make them look a little better anyway. Okay, now what I've done, I've put these running boards, the front ones, back on with you can see this groove here. This is the outboard groove for the T-nut, and this is the slotted hole in the end in the mounting bracket, and I've got this running board slid as far outboard as it will go. That's where we want it to be, and I'm going to drill up. I have to drill 8 1/4-inch holes up through that groove up to the top side of the board. Now we're going to drill all the holes, even the ones we're not using, out to 9/30 seconds. There we are, 9/30 seconds. Drill everything. What we're going to do now is cut strips of this. This is the remains from our rear wheel well liner project. And we're going to cut strips of this to sit on top of these brackets all the way along. That will create a barrier between the aluminum and the steel and keep them hopefully from rotting anymore or any faster. Now we're going to fill our unused holes. There's 3 of them. And for all of this job, we're using 1/4 by 1.5 stainless steel carriage bolts. And that is why we drilled these holes to 9/30 seconds. It's just the right size that when you tighten them up, it pulls the square in and digs in. So it bites, but you don't have to spend hours and hours filing the whole square. Once we've got these tightened off, we'll just get the zip wheel and knock off the bits that are sticking through. There is 1 extra hole back here, but it's way under at the back. And there's not much I can do with it because the nut here will be right where it has to sit. So we're going to leave that one. Looking back on it, I could have avoided drilling a hole here and just used this one for the hold down, but oh well, too late now. Now we can set our plastic shims on here. We've got these painted, by the way. We can set our plastic shims on, drop the boards on, and get all the bolts started through. Okay, once we've got all our bolts in and I've got a nut started, we just pull it back so we know it's outboard as far as it can go. And then we'll get underneath with the gun. We'll just snug the nuts up, and then we'll use the ratchet to gently pull them in. So we pull the heads of the carriage bolts down into the aluminum. Now I have to deal with something. The splash guard is supposed to, if you had this kit, and it comes with all the hardware, there's these giant self-tapping screws that pass through the mud guards and screw into this end of the extrusion. Lots of times they'll just rot away, or in this case, for whatever reason, they're completely missing. And they had a metal tab bolted to the underside of this. So that's fine. We'll put the tab back, but there's no room to put that thick plastic that we had for the to insulate the two metals from each other. So I just put a layer of Gorilla Tape on there, and that should look after that. Now we got to put the fender flare on. It's pretty straightforward. Unlike the back, this is the actual vehicle that this flare is designed for. So we're just going to follow the instructions and put it on. With one exception. You can see here how it just covers up the end of our Cummins turbo diesel emblem. There's many ways to deal with this. You can remove them and just get rid of them. But most of us Cummins people are proud of our Cummins engine and like to show off the badge. So you can also take it off and then move it a little higher, which will get it out of the way of the flare. Some people will take it off and put it over here where it is on a 06 to 08 truck, because once they put the big headlights in, there was no more room for it over here. But I'm going to show you what I did, and I kind of like it. This is the other side. I just cut the turbo diesel part off the bottom and left that big chrome Cummins C. I kind of like that. So here's how I do it. I get a hacksaw blade and I just very gently start sawing this way through it. You do have a little wiggle room, like there's the adhesive on the back of these things is quite thick, so that will keep you from gouging the hacksaw blade into the paint if you're careful. And besides, we just need to get it close, and we can get it the rest of the way with a knife. So I'm going to start gently sawing on this, and when I'm pretty sure I'm just about all the way through, I'll stop and we'll do the next step. Now I'm just using a fishing line as a saw, and I'm working back and forth slowly. You just tug it back and forth slowly with a gently pull up on it, and that'll cut through the adhesive. And once we see we've got a straight line and that we're up to the top of this badge, we can stop. I'm sorry, I've got this thing on axle stands in a really tight spot, so I can't really get my tripod set up. But so now you can see there it's loose, so we could probably just fatigue it off. But what I'll do is I'll get in there with a sharp knife and just give it a little help, and it'll be off in a jiff. Now I got to get in here with a plastic scraper and just get as much of this guck off as I can. Then we'll clean up the rest of it with some acetone, and you'll never know it was there. Okay, so there you can see that's all cleaned up. Now we're just going to go ahead and put the flare on by, for once, simply following the instructions. So that should be rather unremarkable. So I'll be back when I'm done, because there's not really anything to show you there. Okay, there we go. We followed the directions and the fender flare is installed. Oops, sorry. It's tight in here. The last thing I've got a couple more screws that go in down here, but that goes in once we put the mudguard part of the running board on, and we'll be doing that right now. So we've got to, this hole already exists in it, and we have to see about these two holes. Okay, there, we've got it. The mudguard is on, and the flare, and everything is all buttoned up. These old things, man, they've got so many holes drilled in them from this, that, and the other thing. I can't, I don't know if this is the first truck that these things have ever been on. But anyway, what are you going to do? It is what it is. They're on. Now we'll start working on the rear one. We've got the rear section of the running board mounted on. Lucky I was able to just use the existing holes that were already drilled through it. Didn't have to drill anymore. Now we're going to try and get the mudguard on. And this one you can see has got 3 great big holes cut in it. You can see this one here has got 3 great big holes cut in it to use these big, the extrusion to attach it. Now, I do not recall those big screws being in there, and I kind of think that it was just flopping around. So we're going to see if we can come up with some sort of way to attach this to that. Otherwise, we'll have to make like a little bracket down underneath here. Except in order to do that, I'm going to have to drill more holes. And those holes are pretty damn big. So if there's any way at all we can use those holes, I would like to try. So there's the mudguard on. We made sure that we've got it. We made sure that we've got it plumb, and it looks good from the front. There we go. We don't want it sticking too far outboard, not like the ones on the front do, because they'll just catch on everything, right? So we've got them tucked in a little bit. It's in maybe 1/8 of an inch or so further than the one on the other side, but that's okay. It's fine, because you can't look at both sides at once. Now we can put on our mud flap, same like the other side. It's going to key off this screw, and then once we've got it attached to that screw, then we'll make sure we've got it level, and we'll drill the holes for these 2 screws, get it attached, and then there's 1, 2, These actually go through body structure. So we'll drill those from behind and stick a bolt through. And I think on the other side, I stuck one self-drilling screw in this end over here. And that held everything together nicely. Well, there's our mud flap on. Perfect. I'd show it to you from the back, but I just can't get around there. Once I get it back on the ground and get it out of here, we'll have a look at what they look like from the back. Well, this thing is looking pretty darn good now. It's pretty tight in here, so it's hard to see, but I'm liking it. And that's it for that one. All I got left to do is when it's back on the floor, I have to torque up these lug nuts on the back wheels. But aside from that, this job's done. Anyway, we learned quite a bit. We figured out how to get full wheel well liners in it. We figured out how to get the fender flares on it. We figured out how to make that all work with our running boards that we had to patch up because they're all rotted out. But they're good and solid now. I was bouncing on them. They're strong as anything. Down the road, maybe we'll replace them. You know, who knows? But for now, they're good. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for tuning into our channel. It makes me happy that you come over here to see what we're doing. Hope you'll come back and see us again. And until then, this is Kevin saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage.